we could breathe between sessions.
Yes, I was just wanted to suggest that. Maybe Alexander, would you mind leading us in a minute of just breathing in and breathing out?
All
Or
right. Okay, so thank you, Tim. And again, thank you for this last session that we just heard on the living economy. Let's take a moment to breathe in our gratitude, our inspiration of empowerment, our connection to the living earth. Breathe in deeply. You're probably doing it several times, which is a good thing. And breathe out now, this appreciation, this connection, this sense of a larger narrative that we are weaving here together. Listen for how we can connect what you just heard about the empowering economy to our next session that Tim will tell us about now. Thank you.
thank you so much, Alexander. And also thank everyone. I think everyone who's here. It's wonderful to see so many people, even if a lot of you are just names. But it's wonderful to see so many people when this was born as an idea three equinoxes ago. It's nice to see such an uptake in interest, and also to speak briefly. Again, you spoke about trying for us to find a way to connect on a more regular basis and find ways for our communities to connect. So that's also something that we want to start. After the Connectathon, we'll be having regular meetings on Wednesdays. We hope the different networks and organizations and individuals will host one meeting each, and there'll be an opportunity for us to meet on a more regular basis and see how we can get on with actually doing things together. So thank you for that. Thank you for the breathing. I've had quite the morning, but we won't go into that. So I felt quite a bit of tech stress. And if my sound goes a bit wonky, wave, or then I can see you're frozen and I'll switch to a different network. Those are the challenges of life in the digital era, which is what we're going to be talking about this hour. So basically what I like to do, because I know we have a lot of people in the room with a lot of interesting ideas, and I really like to explore that. We're talking about how do we future-proof social media, but it's broader than media. Like, how do we future-proof social networks? How do we operate in this space in a way that guarantees us freedom and privacy and the ability to cooperate and share? But I'd like to just start with maybe a couple of minutes to set the discussion in some kind of context. And I'm going to lean quite a bit on, I don't know if you know Jonathan Haidt. I'm just going to drop a link here in the chat. Very interesting, originally a philosopher, and then I think more in the realm of social psychology. He's been studying a lot of how the social media over the last 10-20 years has affected, in particular, young people, but also democracy worldwide and other areas. And I think that is really interesting, even if this is very much focused on the American perspective. I think it's interesting because I think even if Europe isn't as far gone, maybe for various reasons, not as extreme, and I definitely don't think you'll find the same thing in South Africa to the same degree for other reasons. But there's a few observations that I think are relevant to mention, and he usually starts by describing the 90s, like before smartphones, before the TikToks and the Instagrams and all these other features of the Facebook, even when the internet was quite young. But he said you could notice that there was, and those of you who are my age, older and a little bit younger, will probably grow up free range. You were out and as long as you wanted, just be home for dinner, fall off bikes, fall out of trees, hurt yourself. Nobody was worried that we were going to get kidnapped, or something weird is going to happen to us. It was just what kids did, and in that we also learned through playing with each other, we had to handle conflicts. We couldn't run to our parents when we got into an argument, we sort of had to deal with it because our parents weren't up in the tree or wherever we were having a conflict. So we had a very up to like in the 90s, at least in the Americas, and I think this holds true to a degree also, at least in Sweden. We had a very free range kind of way of growing up. But in the 90s, for various reasons, a sort of more protective attitude towards kids started coming into play. You know, it got more and more like, okay, but maybe don't do dangerous stuff and bad things can happen. And like parents, we're here to sort of help you and support you and solve your problems for you. So that sort of was a mild trend that started. But of course, growing up in that trend, you're more susceptible, you're more inclined to look for somebody, some authority to solve your problems for you, the problems that you normally solve yourself. So far, still manageable. But what happened, like when Facebook came into play, it was, you know, it was fun. Twitter was fun. They were kind of they had limited social functions. They were useful tools. They helped us reach out to each other. But with a few inventions, like the infinite scroll, was one thing that came. All of a sudden, people got caught in by social media, and you'd like spend more and more time on social media. And the retweet button was another on Twitter, another invention that suddenly it became possible to go viral. That wasn't possible before. You know, you could only speak to your followers. Now all of a sudden, the world was opening up. And Jonathan kind of describes this as, because it was also, at least on Facebook, you kind of had to have a profile and a bunch of friends before anyone would pay attention to you. But on Twitter, you could just create a profile, and then you could attack anyone you wanted. And he describes a bit like giving people a dart gun. So you have like, you're anonymous and you can shoot darts at anyone you want that you dislike for whatever reason, and sometimes for hardly any reason at all. So all of a sudden, you could find yourself at the receiving end of a whole bunch of social abuse from people you've no idea if they're even humans. And now these things start trending, and the situation gets more and more frightening, and or not, well, frightening, intimidating, unpleasant. So we're having this trend happening on social media that you can just anonymously backstab or attack anyone you like, which is obviously a problem for democracy. And in the ancient Greece, I can't remember the term for it, but this is not a new phenomena. They described it as, I wish I knew the word, I'll have to look it up. But when you get to a point where only the extreme voices get louder and louder, and the moderate, so the like 80% in the middle, it just gets unpleasant to be in this forum. So you start withdrawing. And this is something you noticed in ancient Greece, and I think you can definitely notice it here in the modern latter-day technical society we live in. There are, globally, you can see the consequences of how democracy is getting more and more frail. I think The Economist does regular appraisals of how democratic different societies are, and we can see around 2015 the trend turns, and now we're sort of heading down. Fewer and fewer societies are considered democratic or have this as high democratic scores as they had before 2015. So there's a worrying trend, you know, on the one hand, and that's the democracy side. If we want to move into that, obviously we have the more invasive protocols that you could find, for instance, in China, and probably a lot of other countries are going to be using this with like social credit scores, which, you know, social credit is not per se a bad thing. It's really useful in a local community, but it functions entirely different in a local community where everybody knows each other. Whereas now globally, you have an arbitrator of what is acceptable and unacceptable behavior, and it's not difficult to understand how that, once it gets linked to your freedom and your right to, it already is in China. Like if you are associated with the wrong people, you know, then all of a sudden that might influence your credit rating. So obviously these are really powerful tools to limit people's freedom and democracy. And I'd probably consider myself a fairly left-wing person, you know. So it's when I speak of freedom, I mean the freedom to speak, you know, the freedom, not necessarily the freedom of assets and all these things, but I think there's a lot of value in there too. I'm not actually anti-capitalist, should point that out. I think it's a useful tool, but it's just a tool. It's not a philosophy. When we think of it as a whole system, that's when we get into trouble. So we have these worrying trends. We also have some quite significant changes to mental health. I mean, obviously, physical health is a little bit worse than it was in Sweden over the last couple of years, because there's much more sitting down and playing games for boys in particular. And there are definitely some mental health effects on young boys and young men, but it's a lot worse for young women, and which Jonathan has been observing, that you can see from around 2015 to today, you can see a doubling in increase of attempted suicides, of actual suicides, of anxiety, of depression, of all manner of health metrics. It's really going down the toilet, and it's affecting young women in particular, especially the ones who get on social media quite early. And the reason for this is boys kind of like doing things together, rough and tumble and all that stuff, if we want to talk about boys and girls in that sense. And for boys, it's a lot of time spent on internet is gaming, and then you're gaming with your friends, you know, you're fighting another team. So it's not that unfamiliar from how boys traditionally played games. Whereas for women and young girls, you're now in a social space where you have to compare yourself with people that you would never normally compare yourself with. I mean, before you might compare yourself with the small net of people, or the small group of people you could that were your peers, you know, that you only had so many friends and so many likes. All of a sudden, one of your friends could go viral on TikTok, and all of a sudden you're comparing yourself with other people your age that are so much more successful and are prettier, have more successful lives. And of course, this is now creating a lot of anxiety. These are, and you can see how it's now been around 2010, 2015, it started showing up in this general anxiety, just both from boys and girls, or men and women, started showing up in the university and in universities in the States. And you can see a strong trend among, rather than coming to the university with a sense of, yay, I'm going to learn new things, I'm going to experiment, I'm going to grow as a human. It's more, I need protection. So we need trigger warnings. We need to be protected from reality. Reality is getting more and more scary as a result of these trends. And these are, of course, very troubling trends. If we look at our eco-civilization context, the idea of creating a new culture, obviously these are trends that are not very beneficial to the creation of a new culture, because what we want is strong young men and women, not overconfident, but confident, and that feel they can take on whatever they need to take on to create a new society. We also need much more deeper functions for democracy. So that's just like a setting of the table. And I think like there are two questions, or setting of the scene. So the two questions I thought would be really interesting to explore. And the first one is, can we change? Are there hacks we can apply to TikTok, to Twitter, to Instagram, that could actually minimize these effects or lessen these effects? That's not the question number one. And the question number two is, are there, maybe that isn't an option. Maybe those systems are those systems, is the incentive structures of those systems so ingrained in the current policy of capturing attention and algorithms pushing you to the bottom of your brainstem, as the saying goes, then we need to create other systems of social media, social connections, networks. And in that case, what do they look like? So that's the setting. So I'd maybe just like to ask the room if anybody has any thoughts on, first, is there anything we can do to improve TikTok, Twitter, or X as it's called now, to improve these systems? What could be done to improve these systems? What's viable? Yeah, or just generally your thoughts on that tirade of social media. You might be a little bit if nobody wants to jump in, maybe I could just pass over to Alexander. Fantastic, please. Fantastic.
Well, yeah, and then Monica is here, so I will definitely want to pass it on right in a moment. But I think one of the keys that you are at least raising for me, Tim, in this hour as we're considering here, is the difference between technology that connects and technology that disconnects. We often say, hey, this is the way you can contact me. You can connect to the internet. You can connect, but often the connection that we do disconnects us from life, from nature, from the living world, even socially disconnects us. So I think this distinction between technology that connects and technology that disconnects is important. We have become often app dependent. When you're app dependent, it's like you can't navigate, if your GPS isn't working. You don't know even how to move around if you can't have, so if your phone dies or something like that, you can't. So that's becoming app dependent. But the flip side of that is being app enabled. And when you're app enabled, then you're augmented and empowered. And so what I really like is the use of AI as representation of augmented intelligence, not artificial intelligence, because I think the real power of AI is as an augmenter, because the potential of these social media platforms, of the kind of things you've been talking about, Tim, is that it leads to a zombification. That's even a term in sociology these days, a zombification of our society, where people are just, you see these even memes where people are walking around looking at their phone and so unaware of their environment that they bump into things or fall over things. So that kind of zombification, being disconnected, I think it's one of the key threats. So how we have technology that connects life with life and technology that augments our potential to human well. I think this is the challenge. I'm not really providing solutions here, Tim, but just saying that this is how I'm holding it. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Alexander. That was beautifully summarized. I love what you said about tech that connects and tech that disconnects, and app dependent versus app enabled. Those are really, really useful concepts. I'm sure we'll dive a bit more into personal AI as we progress. Thanks so much, Monica.
Yes, I can help you, Manica.
Manisa, sorry, Manisa.
Goes with the pronunciation in your languages. Yes. But yes, Alexander, what you said, zoom in and zoom out. And I think today with ancient future Europe wisdom, we had the social experiment of how the vibrations don't go together when you wanna really go with very high vibrations into the networks, because they are not made for those vibrations. And this is something that I would like to raise a debate here. What do you think about higher vibrations? We know that we cut trees so the Wi-Fi connection can go through. So the trees are love, and we are, as one of the colleagues said, the cell of the nature. We are the tree in moving option. So my question is, what do you think about, is this even compatible if the intention of the digital platforms is maybe not to deepen your roots? Because what we are doing in Slovenia with eco-civilization is to connect to our roots on local level. So I think that zoom in and zoom out, I guess, is going to be a future. So we connect, we zoom out, we connect to each other on the global level, but then we have to go deeper into our roots, because connecting with our roots made me empowered, because we didn't know the real truth about Slovenian nation, which is very, very deep and very aboriginal. So maybe how these two worlds can even be combined. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Manita. I just want to riff off that. Did I get it right? Sort of. Good enough. So I think you're touching on something quite important. This idea of vibrations, intent. I think it's very difficult for human flourishing to happen in a context of social media that's not designed for human flourishing. That's rather designed for the opposite. So I'd say that might be an argument against. We probably can't fix Twitter. We probably can't fix Facebook and these things because the model is the wrong model for what we want to achieve. I think Jaron Lanier, Lanier, who one of the early VR enthusiasts, really interesting. He wrote a book about why you should ditch your social media. Recommend listening to him, but he says that it's almost like if you build a car and it's designed to flip and roll, you know, and that's what it does. There's no way you can never drive it and it won't flip and roll. And he says basically that's what our social media is today. It's designed in such a way to actually be detrimental to us, and there's nothing we can do to fix it. So that's one perspective. But I do like the idea of vibrations, and maybe it's like sensing in is what is the foundation of this platform, and is it in alignment with me? What is the policy? How are employees treated? Where do profits go, etc., etc.? And I think that's a really important question, and it goes beyond social media. You know, that goes like, where's my pension fund putting money, etc., etc. So that might be something in the new social media or new social networks or whatever tools we're building. We need to also factor these things in to actually give us information. Something also worth mentioning is one of my favorite analysts, Vinay Gupta. Vinay, yes. He usually says that what we have is information asymmetry. So we've had this long tradition of like, you don't know anything and the person selling the product knows everything. You know, and in social media it's even more extreme because YouTube knows, or Google kind of knows more about you than you do. Amazon knows more about you than you do through your patterns and through metadata, exactly. So we have a huge asymmetry between what we know, even about ourselves, and definitely what we know about the counterparty. So, but I think it's possible maybe that asymmetry can be dealt with in the future through the technology we now have. So we can actually get access to information about the products we buy in a way we couldn't like 10 years ago, but at least theoretically it's now possible through, you know, blockchain and other distributed ledger technologies. So thank you for that. Really good good input. And Roberto.
Yes, thank you, Tim. And yeah, you touched on a lot of topics on what's going on, what is the status quo. And yeah, we're talking about it. I start to think about, okay, why do we actually need it, right? Why do we want to be on the social media? And I think it's because we have this kind of like wanting to be associated, almost like the freedom association. The reasons that we want to come together and find a place of belonging and be informed about what is going on, into what we think and what people like us think. And so it satisfies a need, and that's why it's really it's really there and is really useful. I think the issue is that with the platforms you mentioned is that there is always on the back some corporate financial interest. Then because of that, then it's in their own interest to feed from your data, feed from your interest, and monetize on that. And that's why they want you more and more, because of course, if there is the financial interest, there's no end to it, right? So to fix that, yeah, we would need to start to, I don't know, nationalize them, or to make them become a public good. And the problem is, if there is financial interest, would they ever choose to become a public good, right? So I don't know if it's fixable for that. I know that government can actually enforce that something does become public good. So it's potentially fixable through a government. But right now, these networks are actually bigger than governments. And that's really crazy if you think about that. And yeah, one thing that could also fix is that that would open up the data, right? But again, with financial interest, that's not a convenient thing. So when you open the data, you could actually share what it is that you're interested with. You basically get access to that all information of, should you wish to share what are my interests, and please get in touch with me through this interest. So I don't know if it's possible, because of course the incentives are not aligned for all this to happen. So maybe we need to do something completely different.
Cool, thank you, Roberto. Yeah, and I guess that's also something that HoloChain is working on. But yeah, I'd say that if one's going to look at it crass, and it's like, yes, you can't change the behavior of a corporation if it's scared at making money. It's not going to, that's the Moloch problem. On the other hand, you can't use government to change corporations if corporations are bigger than government and actually own the government. So it's almost like it's a huge system that is so enmeshed in itself that it's very difficult to change any of that. The incentives are just too strong to do what it already does, which seems to be almost like a allegory or a reflection of our world. We are stampeding towards resource depletion and environmental degradation, etc., etc., etc. Even like uncontrolled AI, it just seems to be our thing to rush forward and then not be able to stop because of the sheer momentum that we have. So maybe stopping is not possible, but we need to find a deviation, a way to sort of change course. We can't stop, but maybe we can sort of change course. Maybe like this mass of people can be funneled into many different directions, and maybe from there something can be born, speaking philosophically. And also, if anybody has any questions or any reflections, please pop them in the chat, and I'll try to keep an open eye on that. I know sometimes it's uncomfortable to speak, but just because it's uncomfortable to speak doesn't mean that you don't have some really valuable things to say, which is probably the case. So please also add some thoughts. Otherwise, I might just have to pick some people for some more thoughts. But we have Isha.
Yes, hi. I actually have two thoughts on this. I'll begin with the first one, and this is again something that has just came to my mind while I was listening to everybody. In India, there are strict advertising rules when it comes to cigarette packets, or like when you are talking about promoting or using, smoking, or you're buying alcohol. There are relevant advertisement boards. Even the product packaging comes with regulations on how much space does the box need to reflect upon what damage it is doing to your lungs and to your health. Similarly, if there was a way to add these kind of, regularize it, or add the understanding consciously of how these social media platforms are affecting your mental health. Also creating addiction patterns within every user in different ways. That I thought was one, probably a way in which, future-proofing the social media platforms could be the case. Again, it's not very easy to do and implement, but just a thought, because you are then putting addictions on a similar platform, and then talking about what affects your physical health and equating it also to what is affecting your mental health. And I'm sure there are cognitive disparities which we can also highlight, which will then ultimately come under your physical health if if that kind of a proof is needed. And the other thing was that, at least in my experience and from my observations, I usually see that when children are at the age of let's say when they are teenagers, is really when they are getting, let's say, an access to a phone, which then ultimately pushes them to get access to social media, right? And they are venturing into the space without having any knowledge or an understanding of what the platform is as a user, right? So if there was a way in which within our education systems, if there were modules or an understanding of what this could do to an individual, not of course beginning at a pace and then continuing on it, how we also learn about environmental education, similar to that, for what social media or what artificial intelligence or what technology it's doing. So those are what, just two thoughts that I had on this.
No, thank you. They are strong thoughts to my mind. I like that comparison of the cigarette packet where you can see this is the problems, and you don't get that screen on Twitter or on TikTok, and it's very interesting. And just a story about the addiction aspect. About must have been 10 years ago, a friend of mine started working for, I think it's King, the company that does Candy Crush and a bunch of other games. I don't know if Candy Crush is still a thing, but it was then. And she was like a middle management person running a like design tech team. And one of the first meetings, she said, okay, well, because this was a very profitable company, and she mentioned, well, maybe we could take some of the profits, to help people with addictions, gambling addictions. And there was like a very awkward silence, and like, yeah, maybe, yes, we should look into that. And then of course she found out that like 90% of King's income is from people with gambling addictions, and literally they would not survive without addiction. Which again, like the whole system is built on addiction, like in the most crass way possible. So yeah, they're never going to be setting up any warning signs, but that doesn't mean that we can't create our own warning signs, and maybe we can get into that a bit later if we have time to talk about personal AI. I think I'll loop Patrick into that, but I'd like to also hear Gavin and Dile. Well, Gavin first.
Yeah, I think it's actually just such an interesting question. It's such a microcosm of our general problems with society itself, in that social media, I don't think can be fixed, as you said, because it serves a model of consciousness, a model of society that's top down completely. Essentially, for the users, there's some incentive like this is amplifying our voice, but actually the business model is capture attention, sell us things, and mine our data and influence our behavior. So it's basically power and money, and it serves the people that own the platform and not the people who use the platform, but it's driven by their participation and driven by their interest and engagement. So I don't think these platforms can change if society itself doesn't change. It's just a mirror, as everything is, of what we're actually doing. So yeah, I quite look forward to something that is coming from a different consciousness, like you're building, Tim.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, I think it's probably because we might also see social media as a symptom, and the effects of social media are the symptom of a symptom, whereas the actual problem comes down to how we govern ourselves and how we operate together in a much more complex system. So yeah, definitely huge, broad conversation. Let's see. And Dile, did you want to speak? Your hand disappeared. Are you still there? Did you disappear? Oh, there you are.
Yes, I'm still here. Thank you, Tim. I just wanted to add that catching up from the cigarette advert, the biggest thing with social media is algorithm, and it has been designed to keep you online. The algorithm is designed to keep you online. So if maybe we can have an approach that works against that, because if someone's going through a heartbreak, someone is obese, the algorithm is designed to keep them online rather than to not. So if the algorithm changes to, if someone gets an algorithm that is against what they're trying to do, so if you're obese and you're trying to, you're avoiding exercising, the algorithm should be exercising so that you can actually get bored of being online and get up and do the exercise. However, the way it's designed is to bring up all the stories that have nothing to do with exercise to keep you online. So I think the biggest thing, or where we should start, is the algorithm and going against it. Because right now, that is why in most teenagers or young adults, the algorithm is designed in a way that things that you like and know that it's going to keep you there. That's what they're doing right now. So if you can have an algorithm that is going to make you not be online the whole time, I think that should be the starting point. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. Sorry. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I think that's going against the algorithm is so difficult because the algorithm is so powerful and designed so deeply designed. So maybe we have to come up with a new game, because the algorithm is really a game of disempowerment to make you like submit you to your circumstances rather than a game of empowerment, of taking control of your circumstances, which is probably not a great fiscal plan for most of your apps out there, because obviously for them, the less power you have, the more eyeballs and the more stuff you're going to buy, and the easier you are to manipulate. So maybe there is a game of empowerment that could be woven into this. And I think maybe that even speaks to the rite of passage that we've been discussing and a few sessions during the Connectathon. I think that'd be really interesting to explore. Thank you so much for that input. And Devin.
Right, I think very interesting thoughts all around, and right from the cigarette example. And then I think something that I really liked was what Gavin touched upon, which is, and this is something that I feel also, is that the algorithm is just using whatever consciousnesses we have, and I think and this is sort of an age-old debate in terms of in the cinema industry at least, which is society following from what's displayed in cinema, or cinema is just a reflection of what our society is, right? So that's sort of that debate that's always going on, and that's something that also translates to social media and what we're doing, because if you see the highest consumed content is of really low quality, while there's a lot of good quality content online. It's the viral videos that the videos that go viral are just something that add no value to your life. So is it something that we have to look at ourselves in terms of not beating the algorithm, is just not producing lower content, or consuming better content, not asking the algorithm to change, instead just consuming better content. I don't have an answer. This is just some thoughts that I have. So I'm not trying to give an answer here. And I think a lot of what we're trying to sort of fix here is like Roberto said, against any and every incentive that these corporations and all of these apps have. So going absolutely against their incentives is also something that's not very easy for us to sort of expect to happen. I don't have the answer, like I said again, but I'm just glad that we're having this conversation. And I think having this conversation will then end up leading to somebody having that aha moment that, oh, look, this is how we can solve it. So, yep, that's just some thoughts that I had. And yep.
Okay, thank you, Devin. And yeah, is society or is cinema following society, or vice versa? Chickens and eggs, or hens and eggs are it's always a thing. And I think we talk about that, with tools of transformation, because we know that tools create culture. And I like to point out that the greatest cultural shifts that happen in society is because of tools, whether it's we invent the wheel or the fire or the internet or whatever we invent, it drastically changes our culture. And so far we just invented stuff and then try to deal with it. It's like we've constantly moving backwards into the future because we don't really know where we're going. We're just dealing with all the stuff that shows up, whatever it is. And maybe it's at a point where we need to take that pause and start, okay, what are we going to build? Because we know what we build is going to affect how our culture is going to look in the future, and the expression is going to take. I mean, I like to think of humans like in an epigenetic perspective can become almost anything, and our petri dish is the culture we grow up in. Yes, there are some people that have sociopathic and psychopathic behavior, and there are all manner of these things, but the way it expresses is very much in the kind of environment you're nurtured in. So that environment is really important, and it's very much affected by the technologies we choose to deploy. I think there's something interesting there. And the second thing you said was, we go for the low content, because it's easy to consume. It's almost like, stick something in the microwave because it doesn't take a lot of time, and then watch a rom-com that you kind of know how it's going to finish anyway. But it's almost like you don't want to waste your brain juice on something actually valuable that's going to challenge you, because that's going to take energy, and you don't really have energy because you have energy for like a 3-minute micro pizza because you're tired. And I think that's another thing in the human context is this energy, because if to grow and evolve as a human, it takes energy, and it's hard, and we don't want to expend energy, but it's extremely rewarding if we do, because it actually gives us power of our own lives. And again, what many of Andile and many of you have spoken is like that those algorithms out there are designed to kind of don't do any. There's no need for you to do anything hard. Just look at another video. You don't need to go out running. Look at this instead. Or find excuses for. And I think that's sort of where we need. And it's difficult. I mean, it's difficult for me, like a grown ass man, to have that self-discipline. There's no way I could have done it as a teenager, let alone preteen. And that's the target audience of social media. So I think there's we need to, I'd say, come up with better options that are actually going to coach you towards becoming who you can be and step out into reality and do things in the real world outside screen life. I mean, screen life is great, but it's not the entire story. Thanks. And Day, please.
I've just been listening in the back.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry, Andy. Okay.
It's okay.
I think Day was first, and Andy, yes.
No, I was just, funny enough, I was just listening. I had the video off and I was just listening to everybody, and I keep thinking about this conversation that Geir and I had a couple of years ago about the difference between our social nature and culture, and everything I keep hearing on and off through the Connectathon. I keep thinking about our basic nature, and the points that you just made kind of almost took the wind out of my sails, because I was thinking exactly what you're thinking. We need to learn how to develop again, right? We need to, as human beings, individual human beings, and little collections of them. And it's almost like we've been deprived of the oxygen that we need to learn how to develop properly. And I think you're right about the microwave meal things. We're given so many things that are easy. Or we're challenged online with pretend games that we're not actually engaged in real life, and we don't have the mentors, the actual teachers and mentors to guide us through that development journey. I find that quite fascinating, that all our cultures have in the past had ways of guiding people to develop, but we seem to be losing it. I mean, I was part of $1 billion personal development industry, and that again is all about making money. It's all about, instead of actually helping people develop properly, it's all about getting them addicted to the next course, the next program, the next event to get money from them. So I don't know, it's just a kind of general observation.
No, thank you, Andy. And I think there's yeah, how do we develop again? And again, I mean, this is what the rites of passage were all about. To become a human, to become a human who takes responsibility, so you can be part of your tribe, part of your community, and that's an honorable thing. That's something you want to do. You actually want to step into that role because you look up to it. But in a lot of the story of social media and that universe and that culture is being painted, it's like you want to stay young forever and not have responsibility because that's just difficult and hard, and we don't like that. I think it's years ago. I can't remember the name of the author. One of these post one of the Generation X leading voices. He spoke. He wrote about Douglas Copeland. He said that like in the 50s or like the ideal age for a man was 35 and a woman was 32 if you looked at the movies, and then you fast forward to the 90s and the ideal age was like 21 for a guy and 19 for a girl, you know, and you can see just how that shift has come, and with that obviously a different shift on like what it means to be taking responsibility. I mean, it's not something that our media culture and movies don't really push forward the people that plod along, take responsibility as the heroes. You're looking for the dramatic heroes, you know, that save the day, but not the people that kind of sustain society, which is what we need. Because everybody wants to be a hero, everybody wants to have 1 million followers on TikTok, but you know, there's no status from actually doing the work to make the world a better place in most cases. So I think that's really interesting. And also money, as Cyndi Lauper pointed out, money changes everything. So self-help, where there's a monetary driver, then the monetary driver is probably going to take over because it's so powerful. That's like the most powerful meme currently rampaging through our civilization, I think. Day.
Yeah, I mean, I think what some of the things I was just reflecting on from earlier in the conversation is just, you know, I think in a way it's kind of this rhetorical question: can this thing be saved? And I think we've kind of decided that it can't really be saved as such. And the incentives, you know, as other people have, you know, already commented, the incentives are misaligned. You know, these companies weren't, you know, really ever intended to generate digital public goods. They were intended to generate returns for their investors, and you know, so that's always what they'll do. I love the idea of, you know, wherever we can, you know, to educate people about the dangers, or to give, you know, kind of warning signs, a la the, you know, cigarette packages. I think even a deeper level is almost sort of like a nutritional label that, you know, that indicates, you know, what are we getting out of a thing, like, you know, both kind of the pros and the cons. You know, even a good thing that can kind of shift into not being so good once you've gotten more than you need of it or something like this. And actually, I think there's some ways we could actually do that technically. You know, I mean, you take an open source browser and fork it and add or make a plugin or something like this that you could have kind of tech nutrition labels on the internet if you wanted to. But in terms of building things like that, or building better platforms for ourselves to build pro-social technology, to build digital goods, you know, I think somebody mentioned like, oh, well, you know, if we could nationalize these companies, well, you know, I was thinking about this kind of model of community supported agriculture, or, you know, in the, you know, previous session of the empowerment economy, you know, there's this, you know, essentially we need to fund the digital public goods, you know, and if we can resource that work, then we can build the tools, and then the tools can be aligned. And you know, the algorithm didn't come from anywhere; it was designed to meet the needs. So, you know, whatever we build, we can put whatever algorithms we want on it. And I think it's mainly about that primary lever is actually in resourcing the work, which I think we can do together, through pooling resources in support of those digital public goods. So I'm going to leave that there.
No, thank you, Dan. I love that. This is, I guess, what we're doing now: pooling resources for creating public goods. And as you said, yeah, I like this idea. The technical and nutrition labels. So it's actually a very cool idea. We should start playing with that. What would that look like? There was something else I'm thinking of, maybe also foreshadowing a session a bit later, but how do you get people to change the game, because it has to be a game, because otherwise you're not going to do it. You're not going to do it if you're instructed to or anything else. You've got to want it yourself, and the best way to want things is if it's playful and you want to play a game. So I guess what really want to look at is, what kind of game can we create that pulls people away from the more detrimental social media or social networking, social behavior online, into more rewarding one, that's rewarding for you and for the world. So I think and we have like this. Our last tools for transformation is going to be about the game of good. So that could be a rather interesting topic to explore in that session. But yes, we've got another maybe 8 minutes, so I'm going to, or possibly 9. Patrick, please, you go.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with AO in the chat that the solution is ownership and sovereignty over your own data and over the algorithms. And I think we will naturally be driven towards that. And notice in my own life, because I have now reached a certain insight in how the tech these big companies are using, the semantic networks and this AI technology, the potential of that technology that is not being fulfilled right now, because it just serves to keep people captured and basically serve to siphon profit to a few owners. I really, really want personally to have all that technology serve my intent. And I think people, once they learn about this technology, they will also feel like I want to have these tools and technologies that these big platforms use to serve my own intent. And I think like right now, what you put on social media is, public information that you feel you can share with others. But you have a lot of information that's very private, like intimate thoughts and ideas and drives, and you kind of want AI and these semantic networks to know about these things so they can better serve your intentions. But there's no way, no chance that you're going to put that on a central server for some big corporations to have access to. It just won't happen. So I think that would drive these platforms to become more, native on your device, where you have full control over all the data, and you can be very confident and secure that none of this data will leak and, be in the control of anyone you don't trust. So I think, that's going to be the evolution of these platforms that I foresee.
Brilliant. Thank you, Patrick. And I think not only owning the data in your algorithms, but also I think we don't really have time to dive into it now, but that idea of a personal AI that actually has got your back and is monitoring everything that's pushed at you and is like, no, this is trying to manipulate you this way, this is trying to manipulate you that way. So you actually have somebody in your corner that isn't owned by Microsoft or some other Google or somebody else, but it's actually yours, which is something we obviously want to explore in our work. But that is something that could be one of those game changers that can create an entire shift in the way culture works. But there's so many other ways that can play out. So, but definitely worth putting a lot of attention to or intent into. Gian, please. I think you're muted again.
I was just gonna
There you
say
go.
thanks. Thanks. I think that was a good segue from Patrick into my thoughts. Because that's like Jury and I have been exploring the last 3 months using IPFS desktop for that. So we're actually experimenting with that, developing that individual data hub. My comment was also that I think what I tend to look at technology from the lens of the progress trap, the unintended consequences of progress, and how our cultural evolution, it's also an explanation of why we're in the polycrisis we're in now, the Anthropocene. I think that it's our cultural evolution is exponentially faster than our biological genetic evolution. I'm just gonna post on in the chat here a search of my my hypothesis annotations on progress trap. And if you go down a few, I've been annotating a developmental biologist named Michael Levine recently. And I got in touch with him recently, actually, but he's been doing this amazing research in developmental biology, if any of you know of him. And he's really pushing the boundaries of life itself. You know, like they're creating these artificial life forms in the lab. So it brings up a whole bunch of ethical questions. And so it's along the same line of, as you know, whenever we're developing new technologies, progressing, there's always unintended consequences of that. And I think social media has a lot of unintended consequences. I think if you look at the way humans have evolved culturally, you know, we've evolved for most of our history in small tribes, in small groups, you know, a Dunbar number of 150 or 200 people. But all of a sudden you have this social media, which now you can just interact with strangers from all over the world. And, you know, you make a post on some social media site and you got, all of a sudden you got 100 trolls coming at you, you know, or people interacting with you, and people get into this kind of space that hasn't existed before in our evolutionary history, where you can actually get co-opted into joining some perspective that you don't even think about. You know, it's just, and you can actually, you know, I don't know, you probably, I've experienced this myself. I've seen others on social media where you can get into a fight or an argument with somebody. You see people fighting and arguing over like one sentence, right? So you don't even know the person, and now you're like emotionally like invested so heavily, you know, drawn in to you know, into this antagonistic behavior. So it's the social media has created a context, a technological context that's never existed before in human civilization. So you have all these unintended consequences. And it goes back to what you said, Tim, about how we need to actually have models to, before we create something, you know, don't take the Mark Zuckerberg model of move fast and break things, but we actually have to move slow, think about the consequences that we're about to do before we actually invent it and scale it.
Brilliant, thank you. I'd like lots of comments, but just we have limited time. But let's again, you and Yuri take one of our Wednesdays, and we can dive deeper into the IPFS and the work you're doing. It'll be really interesting. Gavin, please, you'll be our last comment.
I guess just speaking into the thing of gamifying social media so it's more positive, you know, in my experience, pretty much the healthiest way to grow and change is just to rehabituate and try and create healthier and healthier habits. And of course, social media basically makes a habit of distraction and entertainment. You know, the habit that you keep building every time is zone out and scroll and so forth. And social media that, you know, turned learning into a reward-based game, for instance, you know, making a habit of positive interaction, imbibing healthy things, posting things that were actually positive. Would just make that into a habit, and slowly the energy required to do those sort of activities would be as easy as zoning out. It's just we're so used to the habit of zoning out that makes it, you know, just so easy to do. And we all know, I'm sure in this room, that, you know, once you get into a habit of reading a book or a habit of, doing something that's healthy for you, it doesn't really take that much energy. In fact, it gives energy. And yeah, if we just had systems that were incentivizing us and giving us social recognition and approval for doing good things over and over, I think we'd have a much more healthy sort of social media world.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Evan. Yeah, I think I think this is a very interesting topic for the game of good. We need to find ways to game ourselves to do more good and to human better. Fantastic. Well, we are at the end of the hour. This was a great chat, great input. I have lots of notes. I'll be listening to this video once we've uploaded it. So I guess I just like to thank you so much for being here and sharing the space and bringing the right frequency, the right energy. And I'll think it's about time to pass it over to Isha and Aparna, who will be actually summing it all up.